Welcome to another episode of The Intelligent Speculator, where our purpose is to provide insights into economic and market movements that have been successful in helping us grow our wealth. And now, let's hear from the hosts of our show, Jesse Sanders and Lathan Fritz.
Hey guys, I'm your co-host Jesse Sanders. Today, Lathan and I discuss his predictions for the upcoming presidential election. It's crazy to think of all the stuff that's happened up to this point this year. We've had the shutdown of COVID-19, the protesting and the riots. But there's one stat that Lathan thinks will be the key issue in predicting who's going to be the upcoming president. So let's jump right in. Hey Lathan, how you doing today?
Just trying to live the dream over here, my man. What is going on?
Man, we're hot down here in Houston, but all is well. Man, I was thinking about today's show. Topic that's interesting to me. I know I've been talking a lot with my brothers and kind of people that I'm doing life with down here in Sugar Land. Looking forward to the election. We're early
really?
mid-June now. Well, it's kind of wondering how is this stuff all going to play out. I feel like we've had just this crazy stream of events over the last 3 months that, in normal times, it might have taken, a year or two to play out. It just seems like it's just been one punch after another. You get COVID-19, the economy shuts down. You have the George Floyd riots, the protest. It seems like we're almost in like a reality TV show right now.
Yeah, all right.
So you study this stuff a lot. What are your thoughts? What are you looking forward as we're heading into the election? Kind of any predictions and thoughts on what we'll be looking like here in the coming months?
Oh, for sure. I would say I would completely agree with you. I feel like we're almost in a twilight zone. Like, just this has been one of the most bizarre years. I would say probably the most bizarre year in my lifetime. And when I even kind of look at historical elections, like there's been crazy stuff that has happened before, but we're in I believe, a very unique situation where if you would have asked me in January what would happen this November, I would say looking at past historical data and past historical elections, particularly more in the modern political time period. I mean, this thing was looked almost identical to, Richard Nixon's, re-election in 1972. And, him just kind of going into a landslide victory of beating his opponent. And it's just like, but now, because we had the COVID-19 pandemic that shut down the economy for two to 3 months, we have kind of like these large protests and relative unrest in the country. It's thrown a lot of this in the air, and it's going to make it for a very unique turn of events for this November election. However, I would say, right, as we look at it right now, I think the primary thing that is going to tip this election in one, either for Donald Trump or, presumably the Democrat nominee Joe Biden, is when we get to September 1st, I think we're really going to want to pay attention to the unemployment rate, because at the end of the day, you have a third of the country who will always be ideologically supportive of the Republican Party. You have about another third of the country who will always be ideologically supportive of the Democratic Party. However, it is the third,
independent of whatever's going on, they're entrenched in who they're voting for.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what the economy's doing, what's going on. They're going to vote for them regardless, pretty much. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it's the middle third that aren't really ideologically tied to any party. They vote with their pocketbooks, and they're the ones that determine who's going to be president at the end of the day. And so when I say vote with their pocketbooks, they're going to look and say, is the current party going to make my life better in the next 4 years, or are they going to make it worse? And that one question is going to decide who they pull that lever for in November. And so I think,
And you would say back in January, you'd say, man, things are soaring. We're at all-time highs. looks like a slam dunk reelection for Donald Trump.
Yes.
And now we've seen this craziness play out over the last few months. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, so now, we were, prior to the COVID-19, we were at, I think it was like 3.5% unemployment or something insanely low, historically low unemployment. In fact, Donald Trump's numbers across the board were looking very good, of people believing him, his approval on the economy was, high, significantly above, 50%. I think it was like in the 60s, somewhere between 60 and 70%. And so, and when you look at that, people were very, very kind of like supportive of his economic policies, believing that he was going to, keep the economy strong and that their lives would be better. And now the official numbers were just released, the other day, and it's 13.8% unemployment, literally a 10% jump, which is unheard of. That has not happened in, the history of the American economy, of the unemployment going up that drastically in such a short period of time. Now, granted that, yes, that was because our economy was shut down for 2 months. But here's the thing. If we get 15% or over unemployment come September 1st, I think that middle third is going to look at Donald Trump and the Republican Party and say, you failed us. You guys are making this thing worse. You're not getting it better. And they're going to vote him out of office. And for Joe, poor Joe, it doesn't matter what he does, quite frankly. He could be the best campaigner in the world. He could be the worst. It really doesn't matter. People are going to judge whether they cast a vote for Trump or not based on his performance. And if it's good, they're going to vote him in. If it's not, they're going to vote him out, kind of thing.
And you think
you sound like you're about to say something.
Well, I was saying the unemployment figure, you'd say that's going to be a more telltale sign than, say, social unrest, everything that the riots are speaking to, or, the political platform. Like say it was Bernie Sanders, and
Mm-hmm.
he'd be running on a far different platform than Joe Biden would. You would say that the policies and kind of what they're running on is not going to have as much as an impact as the unemployment figure, and kind of what those midliners are saying. Am I going to be better or worse off with this current man in office? You would say that unemployment number is the most telling figure.
Yes. And I would say, like, yes, we're having mass protests right now, and in some instances, rioting, and I think that largely, whether it gets worse or better, is going to be determined on the economics of the situation. So if things continue to get worse, I think that's just going to fuel the flames of people saying, like, my life's getting more desperate. We need change of something, kind of thing. And if I had to guess, like, what happened in Minneapolis was horrible, and there are going to be reforms that come out of this. But I don't think you would have had such a kind of like violent, not violent, but you wouldn't have as much of a shock to it if there wasn't this much like economic hurt that was going on. Because it's like, for better or worse, like when things are good and horrible things happen, people have a tendency to kind of like rationalize it better and not get so emotionally involved into a situation to where they want to make like significant change. And I would say a part of the reason that you're seeing such this widespread, so it's not just, minorities speaking out, but many different Americans are speaking out, is because I think they're also feeling like the economic pain that has been caused from the coronavirus and from just even poor economic policies that have kind of got us to where we are today. I think you're kind of seeing this combination cocktail that's amplifying it. And if things start getting better and unemployment can start going lower again, and reforms are in place for better police officer training, better community relationships with minorities, providing more opportunities to minorities, I think a lot of the protesters will look at that as a victory, and you're not going to kind of see like as much of the mass mass protests that have been going on and unrest that's kind of going across the country. I think you'll see a significant decline in that. However, like, if you see kind of like that employment, you see that employment start ticking higher, more economic pain, yeah, you could start seeing more kind of more aggressive forms of like something needs to change. We need more reforms. We need more radical change. And, I would say it's, I don't think these protests are going to be a cause on the election. I think they're going to be an effect of a deeper cause that's going to determine what the election outcome is. And that's going to be, at the end of the day,
Okay.
people are going to be like, is there financial opportunity for me and my family? And if they believe it's getting better, if they believe it's getting better, then they'll keep the current president in office. If they believe it's getting worse, they'll kick him out.
And you think that figure that people, the most telling figure is going to be unemployment. You'd say right now we're at 13.8.
Yes.
He said if it gets above 15%, well, that's Donald Trump's on the way out.
Yeah, he's out the door.
What would be the number that we could get it down to if if you're in Donald Trump's camp? What number do you think could be the worst it could get to, and you'd still say, you know what, he has the better odds of remaining in office?
I would say if he can get it 10% or lower by kind of like September 1st into the election, I think that will be a very telling sign where people are like, oh, like things are getting better. He handled the pandemic. He handled the economy. He's making things better. So if he can get it 10% or below, or I shouldn't even say him. If the economy can get 10% or below unemployment, then I believe he's on the way to a comfortable victory in the fall. If it's over 15%, he's on his way out, and Biden's on his way in. Where it gets tricky, though, is, like we said, right now it's at 13.8%. So when you get in that 10 to 15% range, that's where it kind of gets iffy. So, if I had to say that, if it's at 12.5% unemployment, man, this thing's going to be a crapshoot. It's 50-50 shot on who's going to win this. At 13.8%, if the election were held today, I have to give a slight edge to Joe Biden. And quite frankly, the polls, people complain about polls a lot, and which is true. They're not always accurate, but when you look at an aggregate of polls, Joe Biden's doing well right now. But you also have to kind of consider too, it is very early. We're at June 9th right now. We have 4 months, which is an eternity in the political sphere, and there hasn't been a lot of advertising or attack campaigns of trying to define the other person yet. And so that's going to be another thing to look at.
For sure. One last question I had for you. So understanding the unemployment number is kind of the telling stat you're looking for. If we look back at past elections, in more modern ones, last 20 to 30 years, have you seen that middle 30% sway an election kind of due to economic events, kind of the voting with their pocketbook? What election did you see that play out, and how did that look like?
Yeah, I would say you want to look at one of the craziest things ever is, and not really crazy, it makes sense when you look at it from an economic situation, where in the last Great Recession in 2008, the economy fell apart, and George W. Bush and the Republicans were in control at the helm at that time. And in 2008, people were like, my life is getting significantly worse. This party is not going to be beneficial for my pocketbook. And that's why they abandoned John McCain, then the Republican nominee in 2008. They abandoned him. And it was actually, it was the kind of blue-collared, industrial working whites that put Barack Obama in office. Now, yes, Barack Obama had a huge minority coalition and got him to vote out in huge numbers. But, it was, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and even places like North Carolina and Indiana, it was just, just a huge influx of these blue-collared, white workers that put Barack Obama in office because they're like, George W. Bush and the Republican Party do not have our backs, are not going to make our lives better. And after 8 years of kind of Democratic control and Barack Obama being president, Joe Biden being vice president, it wasn't just during those 8 years, but there was kind of a common trend of those Rust Belt states just losing even more jobs, having higher rates of drug overdoses, and people looked around and saying my life's not getting any better. So those kind of same blue collared, middle class workers, instead of going for the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton in 2016, they voted in mass for Donald Trump because, he spoke specifically to their pain, saying like, who caused your problem? It was all these trade deals like NAFTA. That's what destroyed your communities. And people were like, yeah, he gets it. And so they voted in mass.
So he spoke to the financial pain.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. He spoke to their pocketbooks. And they're like, so, when you look at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, those were the states that put Donald Trump over the edge. And it was that third that switched from, Barack Obama and Joe Biden of 2008 to 2012. They abandoned the Democratic Party in 2016 and voted for Donald Trump, and that's how he got elected.
So that'll be interesting as we're moving closer in the coming months. What is that 30% going to do? The same group that put Barack Obama in, and then 8 years later, we see the shift yet again, getting Donald Trump in. Where are they going to be in the coming months? So, man, I appreciate your time breaking this down with me. Interested to watch these unemployment numbers unfold, and I'm sure this is a topic we're going to be diving into again here sometime soon.
Yeah, always love it, Jess. Talk to you soon, man.
Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to this interview with Lathan Fritz and Jesse Sanders. We hope to see you next time, and remember to like and follow The Intelligent Speculator on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we are posting insightful nuggets of economic and market movements. And if you would like to get exclusive information, feel free to join the Intelligent Speculator Facebook group. Good day.